They said this galaxy was once at peace, that the light of knowledge would guide us to harmony. But then, one day, 12 million souls vanished in silence. No warning, no plea for mercy. Only ashes remained, and a name no one had dared to speak for millennia. Humanity, buried in myth, forgotten like ancient monsters. But when the abyss stares back at you, who do you call? We called them, and what came to us was not hope, it was fire. The grand hall of the Salari High Council was drowned in silence, not the kind born of reverence, but of despair. Beneath a massive dome of silver-tinted crystal, 12 ancient elders sat in a half-circle. Their faces were pale, not from the natural tone of the Salari race, but from fear. At the center, a woman stepped forward. Her pure white cloak was stained with ash from Arthas, a colony erased from the galactic map less than 3 days ago. Orela, special envoy of the Life-Kind Accord, one of the elders spoke. What news do you bring from the Outer Rim? Orela raised her head. Her eyes burned not with vengeance, but with a desperate resolve. I bring tidings from the ashes of the dead, she said. Arthas has fallen. Population, 12 million. Not one survived. Her voice rang out like a hammer strike upon the sacred hall. There was a sharp gasp. One elder, so ancient his skin was nearly translucent, trembled as he stood. And the Fourth Fleet? They were stationed to protect that world? They were incinerated before they could respond to the distress signal. She lifted a small device. A projection flickered to life on the dome above. A lush green planet, sliced apart by dozens of red orbital beams. The footage was shaky, blurry, and ended with a muffled scream and a final, blinding explosion. This, Orela said, is the work of Karnax. Another elder whispered, his voice thin as wind. We believe them to be myths, nightmares from the Age of Origin. No, Orela replied, they are real and they are coming. She knelt, a rare gesture in Salari culture. Esteemed elders, she said, we are out of options. It is time to call them. Call who? Someone whispered. Orela looked up. Her voice trembled, but she did not retreat. Humanity. Thousands of years ago, in the oldest Salari archives, there were vague records of a species that once scorched entire galaxies within 3 solar generations, not for conquest, but to halt the spread of evil. They arrived like fire, disappeared like thunder, left nothing behind but bone-chilling memory. Those records had long been sealed, labeled as dark legend, too dangerous to awaken. But Orela, once a young scholar, had read them in the restricted library. Humans once lived in stillness, one passage read. But when they rose in wrath, the stars trembled. I object, said Elder Vanan. No one knows if they still exist. And if they do, are they still human? They are a myth, another elder agreed. Brutal, inhuman. We send for aid, not to sell our Salari souls. And if we don't? Orela challenged, her eyes glowing. We've sent envoys to Karnax 3 times. 3 times unanswered, and 3 more worlds lost. You want to keep your soul? Fine. But when Karnax comes to tear it from your flesh, don't ask me why. A dreadful silence settled. Then the eldest of the elders, silent for years, finally spoke. Do you know where they are? Orela nodded. I'm not certain, but there is an ancient signal transmitting from the edge of the Seraphis cluster, a frequency no one uses anymore. Sol code encryption. A star map flared into view. Among millions of glowing nebulae, a single dim dot blinked faintly. I believe it's them. On the planet Salari, beneath the twin suns setting behind the Alara Blossom Hills, a ship lifted off. It was the fastest vessel in the Salari fleet, outfitted with high-grade cloaking and gravitational shielding. In the main cabin, Orela stared at an image. A strange being, pale, skinned, narrow-eyed, but fierce with intensity. A human or something that once had been one. She whispered an ancient Salari phrase. We call upon the light, but what shall we do when the light comes shaped like fire? At the edge of the galaxy, where radio waves from the dawn of time still wandered the void, the ship entered the starless wilderness. And beneath the curtain of drifting electron clouds, they found it. A blue planet. Silent. Beautiful. And watching them, there was no greeting. No flares. No radio signals. Just a shadow, a lone ship emerging silently in the darkness of orbit, shimmering like a droplet suspended in the ocean of stars. Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, inside Earth's underground command center, an alert system dormant for 47 years suddenly flared red. "We've got an unidentified object in geostationary orbit," Lieutenant Parker reported, his voice steady as stone. "It doesn't match any known Earth codes." Admiral Kane Holt, Supreme Commander of the Earth Defense Alliance, was sipping cold coffee and reading a report on defense budget cuts. He looked up, set the paper aside. "This isn't a drill?" "No, sir. The signal's coming from a structure that appears to be a hybrid of organic material and alloy, and—" Parker swallowed. "It's scanning Earth using something akin to a bioresonance sensor." Kane Holt shot to his feet. "Move all systems to black level protocol. Isolate every AI network. Ready EMP contingencies. Get me the president. And call the United Nations." He paused, exhaled slowly. "Looks like we're not alone anymore." 12 hours later, inside a secure United Nations facility beneath Geneva, representatives from 43 nations were gathered in emergency session. Leading them was Secretary General Sophia Wren, a seasoned diplomat and survivor of the Third Continental War. The room held its breath as the doors opened. 5 tall, slender beings entered. Their skin shimmered with a pale blue sheen, their eyes large and pupilless, glowing like liquid light. They wore silver robes patterned with designs that moved like breath. At the front stood a woman. "I am Aurela, of the Salari race," she said, speaking through a glowing translator on her wrist. "We come not with threats but with a plea for aid." Secretary General Wren leaned forward. "A plea? To us? You crossed thousands of light years just to ask for help from humanity?" "Because we've tried everything else," Aurela replied without blinking. "And because you are the last of the legends, the one said to turn darkness into ash." Inside the U.S. Department of Defense's strategy chamber, Admiral Holt reviewed footage of Arthas's destruction, the desperate screams, the infernos tearing through atmosphere. Beside him stood Chief Science Officer Amelia Vos, her hands trembling as she analyzed the images of Salari corpses that had been harvested. "They don't kill to win," she whispered. "They kill to sort, to analyze, to restructure." Holt nodded, his gaze fixed on the screen. "They're not warriors. They're extinction engineers." In a secret emergency summit, Earth's top leaders convened. "The question isn't whether we help," Holt said, voice sharp as steel. "The question is, when Karnax finishes the Salari, who's next?" President Maya Sullivan, a battle-hardened general turned head of state, slammed her palm on the table. "We are not throwing our children into an interstellar war just because of some moral obligation." "No," Holt replied. "We send them because hell is coming, and this time we don't get to wait until it knocks on our door." 3 days later, the UECS Resolve, humanity's first warship, upgraded with Salari technology, launched from lunar orbit. In the command deck, Holt stepped forward to greet Aurela. "We're not here to lead," he said. "We're here to finish what should have been ended 12 years ago." Aurela studied him for a moment, then turned to the window where Earth grew smaller against a sky of stars. "You're not afraid of what we might awaken inside humanity?" Holt clenched his gloved hand. "I'm not afraid of what we might become." And as the light of resolve tore through space for the first time, humanity left behind its isolation, no longer a small planet at the edge of the galaxy, but a living warning hurtling toward a region of space where mercy had long been forgotten. Orion had no dawn. For days, its sun had been smothered by black smoke and chemical clouds. Temperatures dropped by 20 degrees. Plants could no longer photosynthesize. Yet life endured, hiding in shelters, buried beneath stone, silent. And waiting, the flagship of the human alliance, UECS Resolve, entered Orion's orbit just as the Karnax began their final harvest. On the tactical screen, 6 massive Karnax warships hovered above the stratosphere, firing red energy beams that sliced the air like saw blades. Below them, thousands of Salari captives, caged in bioprocessing camps, awaited genetic analysis. "Goddamn monsters," Colonel Elira Vorn, commander of the human landing force, clenched her teeth. "They're doing this like farmers milking cattle." Admiral Holt stood behind her, voice low and steady as stone. "Then we'll burn the whole farm down." Operation Beastclaw commenced at 3:42 Orion time. 4 stealth ships pierced the cloud layers, landing north of Detention Camp 17. The strike team's 60 elite soldiers split into 3 units, jammed the signal tower, cut the energy grid, and civilian extraction. Elira led the extraction team. Their weapons, compact railguns, tungsten alloy rounds, armor next-gen combat suits with bioheat dampening layers to evade Karnak sensors. The first shots cracked the silence like thunder. Karnax, blood-thick, dark violet, sprayed across the sky like ink. "Push forward!" Elira roared, her voice like a temple bell. "No retreat!" And they didn't retreat. The camp gates exploded open. The Salari inside froze in disbelief, staring at figures in black armor, wielding long weapons like thorn spears, charging not to kill, but to save. At the far end of the camp, Lieutenant Parker, leading the grid team, fought to install a jamming device into the control tower. A Karnax warrior charged massive as a truck, 4 arms wielding plasma blades. "Hold it off for 15 seconds, Parker shouted. 2 human soldiers sprang forward, firing rapidly. One was flung aside, limp. The other clung to the creature's leg like a vice, anchoring it with his life. Parker completed the override. The tower flickered. The energy grid fell. The prison fell into darkness, then blinked into blue light, the signal of freedom. But freedom never comes free. A mid-sized Karnak ship passed overhead, sweeping the camp with a plasma beam. Elira turned. A fireball slashed across the sky. She shoved a Salari boy out of its path and was struck herself. She fell, armor scorched, vision fading, but still had strength enough to hand the boy her respirator. "Tell them," she whispered, "we did not turn away." And then she was still in orbit. Admiral Holt gripped the edge of the command table as the report came in. Colonel Elira killed protecting civilians. Objective complete. Over 4-0 Salari survived. "Broadcast this to Earth," he ordered. "Let them see. War has a cost, but it can still save the soul." After the mission, Resolve deployed supply canisters to Orion, food, medicine, comm equipment. On the surface, Salari survivors looked to the human ships ascending the skies like newborn stars. A young boy clutched a bloodied respirator and whispered in his native tongue, "They came from fire, but they carry tears." At Earth's underground command base, President Maya Sullivan watched the footage of Elira diving into the flames. "She wasn't born of Earth," the president said, "but she fought for the values of humanity more than anyone I've known." She turned to her generals. "Prepare Phase 2. "What phase, Madam President?" "Locate Karnax's central command." Across the galaxy, a Karnax warlord tossed the wreckage of an allied ship to the ground. "They've arrived," he growled. "The human legends." A guard asked, "Do you believe they're the ones who erased Krell in the old epics?" The warlord turned away, eyes glowing red. "I don't know what they are, but I know one thing: we fed demons with our own blood." 3 days after the victory at Orion, the UX Resolve docked at a forward Salari space station, beneath layers of glistening metal. In the strategic command room, the air was heavier than gravity itself. A star map hovered above the central table. 8 blinking lights marked 8 planets, all annihilated by Karnax. Admiral Kane Holt stood with arms crossed, eyes locked on the center of the map. Beside him were Aurelia and the lead strategists from both species. "We can destroy their fleets," Holt said, "but unless we find the route, the Karnax Central Command, this war is just a game of cosmic tag." "I agree," Aurelia said quietly, "and I believe I've found a clue." The room fell silent. Every gaze turned to her. Inside the Salari Heritage Archives, Aurela placed an ancient stone tablet on the table. It was worn and cracked, but at its center was a symbol, a five-fingered hand wrapped in flame. This symbol was recorded on 4 planets, once attacked by the Krell species 12,000 years ago, Aurela explained. According to our legends, a race came from beyond the mapped stars and wiped the Krell from existence. She pointed to the glyphs encircling the emblem. We once believed them to be gods, but now I believe they were you. Holt frowned. Humanity never stepped beyond the solar system until 100 years ago. How could this be? Dr. Amelia Voss, senior xenoarchaeologist, activated a simulation. We analyzed geomagnetic anomalies in the tectonic layers of planet Veritas, once a Krell capital world. The results are astonishing. Traces of hyper-advanced nuclear weaponry over 11,800 years old. Nuclear weapons? Holt raised a brow. Like the ones we used in World War III? Closer to something that should never have existed, she said. Aurela added, we believe that prehistoric humans, or some evolved form of them, once had interstellar travel. And after eradicating the Krell, she continued, voice softening, they vanished. On the other side of the galaxy, deep in a Karnax archive vault, a squad of warriors uncovered a dark gold relief carved with the image of a humanoid figure in ancient armor, firing a beam of light straight into the Krell planetary core. A Karnax commander trembled and growled. They've come before. Back at humanity's strategic command, a fierce debate erupted. President Maya Sullivan, broadcasting via interstellar comms, didn't mince words. We cannot accept that we were once a species of destroyers. If this truth is revealed, billions could lose hope. Holt responded without hesitation. So you want to bury the past? When the present is screaming it back into our faces? Aurela interjected, her eyes alight. Sometimes ghosts aren't there to haunt us, but to remind us what was buried will always return, at the worst or most necessary moment. The next day, at the edge of the Arendor system, an ancient communications relay reactivated. No one knew who sent the message, but the frequency, wave pattern, and language structure perfectly matched ancient human dialects. The message was short. They have forgotten us, but we are still here, still ready to return. Earth Command fell into a chilling silence. Aboard the Resolve, Holt stood before the observation deck, staring into the ink black of space. At his feet sat a black box, recovered from the wreckage of a Karnax ship. Its encrypted contents were slowly unraveling. Lines of decoded text lit the screen. Project Rebirth Operation to locate and eliminate origin species. Humanity. Threat classification. Galactic extinction. Level. Aurela entered the room, holding a charred fragment of a Krell-era skull. Etched into it in metallic lettering were the words, Solus ex tenebrae, light from the darkness. This phrase, she said, appeared on every planet liberated by the ancients. And now, she placed her hand over her heart. It lives again. Holt turned to her. No longer a military commander, but a man carrying the weight of a world. Then, let the light return. But this time, let's make sure it doesn't burn hope to ashes. And far across the galaxy, on a nameless world, the true origin of Karnax, the enemy, began gathering its entire force. Not for victory, but for survival. No warning, no alarms. Just a single flash like the birth of a new star, then silence. Humanity's first settlement beyond the solar system, Tayat Station, home to 37, 0 souls, vanished from the galactic map in under 11 minutes. At the Strategic Surveillance Center in Nevada, a young technician named Mallory was the first to notice. She thought the scanner had glitched. But then all cameras, sensors, and satellite links went dark at once. She froze. Moments later, the interstellar alert system flashed crimson. Madam President, Tayat is gone. President Maya Sullivan left the negotiation table, mid-sentence, brushing aside a meeting with Salari diplomats. her voice cut like a blade. "Show me the footage." Only one video had made it through, captured by a low-frequency orbital satellite, grainy, soundless. It showed a human child looking up at the sky as a crimson flare bloomed above like a dragon of fire. Then, whiteout. Final toll, 18,432. Confirmed dead, including 3,700 children. The rest harvested by Karnax. The command room stood in paralyzed silence. An advisor whispered, They didn't just attack. They wanted us to feel it." President Sullivan stared at the screen, where a single line now pulsed. "This isn't war. This is a sacrifice." Far across deep space, aboard the Karnax mothership, the Maw, Supreme Leader Vagor stood on his obsidian command platform, eyes locked on the stars. "They were nightmares once," he said. "Now, they wear soft hearts." One of his lieutenants hesitated. "Are you sure? Humanity destroyed the Krell in just 3 solar cycles." "Exactly why," Vagor replied. "I must force them to become demons again." Back on Earth, Admiral Kane Holt entered the emergency war chamber, holding the only surviving image from Tayat Station, the Earth flag fluttering amid fire. They chose the moment, they chose the victims, they chose the path where we have no way back. President Sullivan stared at him. "You want retaliation?" Holt didn't blink. "I want closure." 2 days later, the counter. The outer edge of the Lissar system had always been as still as a primordial lake. But that day, it trembled. The Karnax Fleet 68 warships was anchored in orbit around the planet Mathrin, preparing for their 12th biological harvest. They didn't know that just 3 space units away, silent spatial rifts had begun to open like invisible blades, slicing through the void. From them, humanity's Judgment Task Force emerged. The command ship UECS Titan, 3 times the size of the mothership Resolve, was the embodiment of everything humankind had learned from millennia of war. Inside, Admiral Holt stood before a tactical display, eyes locked on the glowing enemy signals. "Sir," Lieutenant Dalton reported, "they've got a 3rd-tier orbital defense grid. Any energy-based weapon will be neutralized within 6 seconds." "Then we won't use energy weapons," Holt replied. "Deploy Sundown. Phase 1. From the Titan, 7 Sundown warheads launched no thunder, no flash. They cut through the void like dead stars, moving at 30 times the speed of sound. At the Karnax command deck, the officers didn't even have time to sound the alarm. The space before them warped like shattered glass. Then, absolute silence. A spherical pocket of space, nearly 3 kilometers in diameter, became meaningless. Everything within it, warships, drones, satellites, even light, simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no flame, no scream. Just nothingness. Titan's war room 43 seconds after launch. 37 Karnax vessels, completely erased, Dalton announced. The rest are scattering. No counteroffensive detected. Holt didn't smile. He just nodded once. Broadcast the open message. Once more, his voice echoed across the stars. "We are not here to negotiate. You crossed the final threshold and dragged us with you. From this moment on, any act of violence against innocent life will be answered. By the end of your existence." On Salari Prime, Arila watched the broadcast. The elders sat frozen like statues. One finally whispered, "This is no longer war. This is extinction." Arela closed her eyes, speaking like a prayer. "No, this is what happens when humanity is pushed to the final edge and finds no choice but to cross it." In the Karnax command center, panic erupted. A fragment of footage recovered from a surviving survival drone described the Sundown's effect. "They erased space itself?" Vagor hissed, claws tearing into the console. "We believed we were evolution's pinnacle. And now, we are merely its next victims." A royal aide whispered, "They don't kill to conquer. They kill to end resistance permanently." At Earth's Nevada command base, President Sullivan received the report. Operation Judgment successful. No human casualties. The Karnak's fleet in Lissar completely annihilated. She didn't celebrate. She only asked, "How many sundowns do we have left?" 31, Madam President. And after that, Admiral Holt, speaking from Titan, answered, "We'll have something else. But the price will only grow higher." 1 week later, on the planet Varus, the Karnak's Coordination Center, a scout team discovered a human symbol carved into the stone. But not carved by humans. Carved by the last survivors of the Krell. And beneath it, written in ancient blood, "They have returned. They were once the light, and now that light has become the scalpel." In his private quarters aboard the Titan, Holt stared at a photograph of his son, one of those lost in the Tayat massacre. "You once asked me," he whispered, "why are humans so good at war, Dad?" He clenched his fist. "I never knew, but now I do. If we don't fight, the darkness won't leave anyone alive." To ask the question again, Earth's early detection systems registered a strange pulse from the center of the galaxy, a layered compression wave signal, unlike anything previously recorded. The first decoded line read only one sentence, "Do not come." But it was already too late. Beneath the ice of Greenland, in the Interstellar Strategy Command, a chilling realization dawned. The signal wasn't meant as a warning to humanity. It was a warning from Karnak's broadcast to other civilizations. They weren't calling for help. They were trying to prevent anyone else from witnessing the wrath of humankind. Aboard the flagship UECS Vengeance, Admiral Holt stood before a star map. "This is the last time," he said. "We don't strike to win. We strike to end." "You still believe in a happy ending?" Lieutenant Dalton asked. "No," Holt replied. "I believe in necessity." Operation Final Sun began with the simultaneous activation of 19 jump points, encircling Karnax's homeworld Kyle Zor. The planet burned like a dying red star. Above it hovered 273 warships, the last remnant of the Karnax Empire. Aurelia, observing from the Salari ship Everwind, whispered, "And like every ancient tale, the final light is never a sunrise. It is fire consuming the dark." The human fleet attacked with a strategy called arterial sever, not through direct confrontation, but by slicing the outer defense layers and implanting disintegration devices across the planet's surface. In less than 11 minutes, 71 Karnax vessels were neutralized. For the first time in their species' history, they did not fight back. They only transmitted a meaningless frequency looping endlessly, like the whimper of a wounded beast. The Phoenix Task Force, led by Captain Elon Ward, landed on Kalzor. There was no resistance, only ruins, where biological data centers were actively erasing themselves. The Karnax left behind nothing, no knowledge, no message, no legacy. Ward entered a frozen chamber at its center, an ancient relief. Etched in the stone, the silhouette of a human. Beneath it, a faint inscription. "If they return, remember this. They are not gods. They are a reminder that evil does not come from the stars, but from the place we once called light." At Earth Control Center, President Sullivan received the final report. Karnax fully neutralized, no planet, no fleet. "That's it," a senior advisor said. "We've won." Sullivan did not respond right away. "Send a message to all remaining species," she said. "No boasts, no threats." She turned away, eyes on a rotating hologram of the galaxy encased in glass. "We've won, but who will dare leave their world now?" On Salari, religious scholars debated, will humanity become the new Karnax? Aurelia remained silent for a moment before answering, "No, they didn't become Karnax. They became what Karnax feared most, and what we, the Salari, once hoped we'd never need." A month later, Earth sent a peace transmission unarmed. A new alliance was formed, Pactum Solaris, an interstellar peacekeeping accord, co-led by humanity and Salari. But those who met Holt felt it clearly. This peace was not born from understanding. It was born from fear. On the abandoned biological station of Kyle Zor, a Salari archaeology team uncovered an emergency data core. Inside, a single video. A lone, dying Karnax, struggling for breath, stared into the lens. "If you hear this, forgive us. We became monsters because we were terrified of becoming slaves. Pray that the light you carry does not become the shadow that haunts the next generation." Back on Earth, Admiral Holt stepped out of Command Center for the first time, no longer wearing a uniform. He paused before a granite memorial listing those who fell at Tayat, Orion, and Lissar. "We won," he murmured to himself. "But are we still us?" Behind him, a child ran past, waving the Earth flag, laughing, oblivious to the blood, the fire, the shadows. From the Everwind, Aurela recorded her final log of the campaign. "We called them out of desperation, and they came like gods wielding justice. But the price of salvation is always a piece of the soul we'll never reclaim." At the Interstellar Union's commemorative station, one plaque bears a single inscription. This was not the end of war. This was the beginning of an era where no one dares toy with the silence of mankind. A year after the final campaign ended, the galaxy fell silent. No distress signals, no fresh scorch marks on star charts, and no one dared whisper of war, not even in their dreams. But this silence did not feel like peace. It was more like the breath between two heartbeats when the survivors begin to ask, "Who are we now, after everything?" On Salari Prime, a new monument was erected not to glorify victory, but to mourn both sides who had fallen. Engraved upon it were the words of Aurela. They called them saviors. But remember, salvation does not always wear the face of mercy. Sometimes it is a bloodied hand that pulls you from the abyss and leaves its own soul behind. Humanity did not return home. They were no longer the isolated species tucked in a galactic corner. They stayed. They built interstellar outposts, established joint defense councils, and monitored strange signals at the galaxy's edges. Not to threaten, but because they could never go back to being bystanders again. President Maya Sullivan did not seek re-election. She spent the rest of her life visiting liberated planets, reading poetry to surviving children, and answering the questions no one had dared to ask before. "Madam," a Salari child once asked, "why do Earth people cry when they win?" She hugged the boy without saying a word. Some questions were never meant to be answered. They exist to ensure we never forget the cost of victory. Admiral Holt, now retired, lived in quiet seclusion in a small home on Europa. Each day, he gazed at Earth through a telescope, not to guard it, but as if watching to see if the planet still dared to dream. A journalist asked him in his final interview, "If given the choice again, would you launch Sundown?" Holt stared into the void. "No," he said, "I'd do it sooner." And on Earth, a new generation grew up with two stories. One, the legend of the Warriors of Light. The other, a warning about the price of power. In classrooms, portraits of those who died for humanity hung side by side with photos of Karnax children who had been rescued. No one wanted the next generation to remember only the victors, but to understand the survivors, too. Pactum Solaris, the peacekeeping alliance co-founded by humanity and Salari, opened 43 academies training in diplomacy, bioethics, and for the first time, a new field of study: morality in extinction, level scenarios. The final question of the course: when you are the most powerful being in the galaxy, what will you do to ensure you don't become the next invader? On Calzor, the scorched soil of Karnax began to grow grass. A Salari botanist discovered a new life form, one that converted the planet's lingering toxins back into breathable air. She wrote, "Even on the soil of sin, life still tries to bloom. Perhaps nature forgives faster than intelligence does." During a closed-door meeting among Earth's military leaders, someone proposed rebuilding the sundown arsenal in case humanity is ever struck back. The one who stood up in opposition was a young colonel son of a victim from Tayat. He said only this: "If we live in fear, we are no different from the Karnaks." The room fell silent. The proposal was dismissed. Aurelia, after completing her final chronicle of the war, uploaded it into an open-access interstellar archive. In it, she wrote, "I have seen light and shadow side by side, and I realized they are not enemies. They are two faces of life in every species." Admiral Holt's final transmission was sent not to allies but to civilizations humanity had never met. If one day you hear the name humanity, don't fear them outright. Find them, and if you're fortunate, they might teach you how to win without annihilating, and how to love a world even when it once betrayed you. On Earth, inside the first Interstellar Museum, at the center of the main hall, two objects were displayed in a glass case: a disabled railgun, a small box of soil-grown grass from Kelzor. Two symbols, two choices, two legacies. The only remaining question belongs to the survivors.